All right, everyone. So thank you for being here. Give yourself a round of applause for being here. We have standing room only. For those of you who don't know much about Hill briefings, this is pretty hard to do, especially in the middle of a work day. So I'm glad to see you all here. This is our second Hill briefing that we've done around our Leaders of Color convening. This is the 9th annual Charter School Leaders of Color convening. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. And our topic this year is elevating equity in public education, the value of charter school leaders of color. And I'm pleased to be co-moderating this panel with Miriam Raccah from the BLACC, Latinx, and Asian Charter Collaborative. Miriam's to my right here. You can definitely applaud that. And I'm going to let each individual person introduce themselves, but I just want to talk a little bit about sort of what this convening is and why it's important, and why, particularly those of you who are members of staffs, why it's important that you are here to hear these voices. This is a collection of a number, in the hundreds, of charter schools that are being led by people of color. And oftentimes when we talk about equity in education and we talk about increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in education, the spotlight doesn't often fall on charter schools. But one stat I do want to read to you all, and it's going to go to my first question, is that 33% of charter schools are currently led by people of color, and that's compared to 17% in traditional district schools. So there's something about the charter school model that is encouraging and supportive of it. Now, we need to have more, right, in all public education. But I'm glad to have these leaders here to talk about sort of why they picked this particular model to offer education to the community of students that they educate and the scholars that they seek to move forward in terms of being ready for college and work opportunities, and to hear from them themselves and you can hear from them exactly why they are in the schools that they are in. But first, I do want to thank our co-sponsors for this. First, we could not have gotten the room or the assistance without our good friend, Representative Tom Cole from the great state of Oklahoma. We want to also thank our co-sponsor organizations, the National Charter Collaborative, the UNCF, and the BLACC, as you heard me mention earlier, the Diverse Charter Schools Coalition, and the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools. If you're representatives of each one of those, can you raise your hand and just let yourselves be seen? Thank you all for being here and for co-sponsoring. We also want to thank our sponsor, the Charter Schools Development Corporation, who is also sponsoring this as well. So why don't we jump right in? I'm going to first ask all of you all to sort of introduce yourselves before I ask my first question. Tell us a little about who you are and your school, and tell us one interesting thing about your school. So I'm going to start to my right with Dr. Ray Ankrum.
Sure. Good afternoon.
Please use your microphone, Ray.
Good afternoon. I really do have a teacher's voice, and I think it would have picked up. Dr. Ray Ankrum, Riverhead Charter School, located on Long Island, Calverton, Long Island. We're the only K-12 charter school in Suffolk County, and we're doing some amazing things. So one thing that we're doing is this year is our first graduating class. So super excited about that. We have 13 scholars, and many have gotten into R1 universities, and we're waiting on these Ivies to come in. So we're looking forward to celebrating that and celebrating them. I'm student focused, so my answers are majority going to be surrounded around the impact that we have on students. I think that that's the important thing. Kind of take the adults out of the element and focus on students. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cady Ching, and I come from the island of Oahu in Hawaii, but I currently lead Summit Public Schools, where we have charter schools across California and Washington. I'm a mother. I'm an only child. I like my snacks salty and a little bit sweet. And I am most directly a product of my mother's unconditional love, my father's authenticity, and my aunt's conviction. I am very proud to be the second ever CEO at Summit Public Schools. And we serve over 3,000 students in California, Washington State in 12 schools. And one thing that's interesting about Summit is we are grounded in the belief that the role of education is to create the conditions for every young person to lead a fulfilled life. And we've defined a fulfilled life as one with purpose, driven by them, financial independence, community, strong relationship, and good health. And for 20 years, we've been open, and we've seen 90% of our graduates go on to get at least one four-year college acceptance. And we're completing college at 2 times the national average. And so I'm really proud to be in community with all of you today.
What I just said to you is, hello, everybody. My Indian name is Zotia. I belong to the Sun Clan, and I am a proud member of the Acoma and the Santo Domingo Pueblos in New Mexico, and it is a privilege and honor to be here with you today. I represent 2 organizations. The first is the Native American Community Academy, a charter school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as well as the NACA Inspired Schools Network. And so in 2006, in response to the need and the want from the indigenous community in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Native American Community Academy was born. And so as a product of a public school education, I never saw myself in the content or the things that I was learning. I never saw teachers that looked like me, yet alone administrators. And so that, my own personal experience led me to want to create opportunities for indigenous education, not just in Albuquerque, but across our country. Because for so long, school has been done to indigenous people. It's time that we reclaim our education, and it's time that we embed indigenous perspective and curriculum and just identity and culture into our schools. And I think that's how our kids succeed, and I think that it really, really empowers them to go beyond their communities, such as myself. I would have never imagined being up here in front of an audience like yourself had I not had one person, you know, in my school who believed in me. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Angela Lang. I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Roll Tide. Although my baby is Tennessee Volunteer. Don't know how that happened. I am the founder and executive director of I Dream Big Academy Charter School. We're newly authorized with a fall 2025 opening. We're the first charter to be authorized in Tuscaloosa, but we're also Alabama's first HBCU charter school. With that, we'll be opening a 612 campus on the historic grounds of Stillman College, with the sole purpose of creating a direct pipeline for teacher education, but also a direct pipeline for our students for a career and college readiness program.
Awesome. Can we give them a round of applause? I told you it was a good panel. I told you. Before we go to our first question, let me just say on a somber note that we're dedicating this Hill briefing, and next year, should we be blessed to be able to do it again, we will name this the official Connecticut State Representative Quentin Williams Hill Briefing series. For those of you who have been a part of our 9 years, you will remember that State Rep Quentin Williams was the Director of Advocacy and Policy of Excellence Community Schools in Connecticut. Worked closely with a number of folks here, and he was here every year advocating for not just excellence public community schools, an excellent African-American-led charter school network in Connecticut, but he was also here to advocate for all kids and for a quality education, no matter the model or the type. And so we lost him last year, and we just have a quick moment of silence for him at this time. Thank you. Okay, so my first question is a long one, so bear with me. And because these stats need to be out loud and I think publicly stated for maybe the first time in your hearing, in 2021, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, National Teacher and Principal Survey, 33.4% of charter school principals were school leaders of color compared to 17.8% in district schools. A further breakdown of those numbers showed that 66.6% of charter school principals were white, 16.1% were black, 13% were Hispanic, 1.3% were Asian, and 0.5% were Pacific Islanders, 0.7% were American Indian, Alaska Native, and 1.5% were 2 or more races. And this means that Black and Hispanic numbers were above or close to the percentage of the U.S. population. Comparatively, 78% of district school principals were white, 9.8% were Black, 9% were Hispanic, 0.9% were Asian, 0.3% were Pacific Islander, 0.6% were African American Indian, Alaska Native, 1.3% were 2 or more races. My question is, although more work needs to be done and always needs to be done to increase public school leader diversity and equity as charter school leaders of color, what is it about the charter model that births more leaders of color proportionally than the traditional district model? And why did you choose this model to offer the kind of education opportunities that you all are offering? I'm going to start with Cady on this one, and we'll go down the line and come back to Ray.
Thank you, Ron. I won't speak for all folks of the global majority, but I'll speak for myself. And growing up, at least in my family, there was this notion that private school was going to be the only way to achieve my dreams. And I remember how painful it was every year that I wasn't accepted for my family. And then I remember after getting accepted in 7th grade, how painful that conversation was every year, where my family sat me down and was like, okay, baby, we're not going to have the financial means to pay the tuition this year. And so we're going to have to withdraw. And they found a way, and that was beautiful for me. But I really began to understand the inequity of public education, and I wanted to be a part of the reimagining of what it could be. And I believe that our young people should have options in the public education system to be able to choose what is their best fit. And I've always experienced charter schools to be changing the paradigm of how we do our work in schools. Charter schools serve as hubs for innovation, but they also serve for proof points for a different way forward in our country. And I want to be really clear that despite the either or the positioning charter school versus large public district, that charter schools are not separate from the public system. And in fact, charter schools enhance the public sector. And by modeling that demography need not be our destiny, we see that our differences can actually pull us together versus push us apart. And so we know that leading intentionally diverse schools is a way to develop future leaders who not just understand the systems that we create, but understand the cascading intent and impact of those systems for all people. And I'm so proud to be a part of that movement, and that's what pulls me into the charter school space.
So in my previous introduction, I let you know that we, as a community, started the Native American Community Academy. And so that was the beginning of a push for a network of schools in the NACA Inspired Schools Network. So currently, we have schools in South Dakota, one school in Minnesota, a school in Oakland, a school, and several schools in New Mexico. And the majority of them are charter schools. Now, we know that we wanted to establish schools that were rooted in community, identity, social-emotional wellness, because we know that a student can't come into the classroom and do well academically if they're not well social, emotional, if they're, if there's other things happening around them that's creating a barrier for them to perform well academically. And so our focus is to not just, make sure that we're integrating them academically, but we're looking at the whole child. We're creating leaders, future leaders who, like I said before, see themselves in what they're reading, who see their own heroes within their community, who see, students before them go on to school and come back and provide and come back to their community. And so because of that, we have a really large group of people who are very interested in continuing the realm of Indigenous education, because we feel that our kids are our future. They're not just our students, they're our kids. And so the more we invest in them, the better that they will be going outside of their community. And so as I became along the lines of public school education, formal, education, but then coming back to a charter school to really teach, one, and then two, become an administrator, I was able to understand the students and my kids that were in my classroom. And so really, really grounding ourselves, grounding our leaders is why the school of choice is a place where we want to make sure that our parents are understanding that your child does have a choice. Your child does have a voice in school. Thanks.
So when I think about why charter schools increase that or birth more of those leaders of color, I reflect on my entry into education. I started as a paraprofessional and then went and became a substitute teacher and then an educator. And once I went into the certification program to become an administrator, it was a very tough ceiling to break of moving out of the classroom into an admin position. And although I went on several interviews and did very well, I could never get that call back of, we're gonna give you this position. I actually had one superintendent tell me I needed to wait my turn, that it would take 10 to 15 years because there were other people ahead of me who had already put in the work. So it wasn't about my ability, it was you're going through this list. And I moved to a different district, and after 1 year of teaching in that district, I had another leader of color come to me and ask me to take over an elementary school. And so they moved me from classroom teacher to principal to an underperforming school, and her key word was, our students need representation. They need to see someone, the parents need to see someone who looked like them. After 2 years, that underperforming school moved to exemplar status. Once I moved into that role, I realized that as a leader of color, it was up to me to identify the skills of teachers and other leaders. It was up to me to create pathways in order to open that door. And so I was very intentional of looking and identifying what were those leadership traits that I saw within other people within our building, and help create pathways that others could move into leadership roles. I took paraprofessionals and moved them into teaching roles. I worked with assistant principals to move them to principals. I worked with principals to move them to the district level. But in that traditional system, it was still always a fight, because it was always, why are you bringing this person to the table versus this other person? And so it was always that fight. And then I looked at, as the charter sector, it was just another extension opportunity to put representation in front of our kids. We say that we want our kids to see it in the career sectors, but they need to see it in the classrooms. They need to see it of who's leading the school buildings. And so I've just been very intentional of, how do I identify those skill sets and how do I support those in order to create those pathways? Because had it not been for that one who saw it in me, I would probably still be waiting my year 15 to get into that door.
Ooh, that was a word right there. You put me last, and hard ask to follow. But anyways, I started teaching in Baltimore City Public Schools, and so I feel like Baltimore is one of those places where if you can teach there, you can teach anywhere. Somebody in knows what I'm talking about. But I want to first talk about like the drain that's on the global majority as classroom teachers. There's a lot that's put on us, especially as Black teachers, because in historically marginalized communities, you then become the point person for all of the disciplinary issues and all of the things that are raised up in the school, right? And so the drain is super serious. I was a union representative in my school, and so I saw like some real horrific things happen in terms of people that shouldn't be in those jobs teaching those kids, because they didn't love the kids the way that I loved them. And so I ended up going into charter schools, and the two specific charter schools that I worked at prior to getting my own school It was during the time of zero tolerance, right? And so zero tolerance, you're seeing like white people scream at black kids and just the trauma that's associated with that, and not just for the students, but then also for the majority that are in that building that are watching this happen, right? And so that happened to me. I had a whole lot of trauma that was associated with working in those predicaments. And so I left. I'm like, I can't do this. It didn't jive well with my spirit in terms of the leader that I wanted to be. And so I was like, listen, I got to do something different. I can do this work, right? But like, I got to do it my way. I can't do it their way. And so ended up taking on my school and doing it my way. First year of me taking over our school, we had 9%. Our third graders were 9% proficient in ELA and 11% proficient in math, right? So like these kids couldn't read, they couldn't compute. Now they're over 70% proficient in both math and ELA. So we're doing the work. But my issue is sustainability, right? It's like this job is really not sustainable for folks, and we have to look at more equitable ways in order to make this work sustainable so people don't leave, don't go to the private sector because it pays more and it's less stress and it's less things to worry about. And so how can we make this more attractive in order for you to stay? And so that's what gravitated me towards charter schools.
Appreciate that. Dr. Lang, if you could pass the microphone that's to your left to Miriam. Miriam, do you want to stand up? Your choice. Yeah, come on.
Oh, you don't have to do that. I can introduce myself. So I'm Miriam Raccah. I'm the CEO of the BLACC Latinx Asian Charter Collaborative. We represent 24 schools, mostly in New York City, but also Long Island, Westchester, and upstate New York as well. Over 14,000 students. We have some members in the room. Raise your hand if you're a member of BLACC. Over here, exactly. So one of our mottos is representation matters. And so I'm heartened to hear you all say that. And I think that's definitely one of the reasons that people of color get into this work, is because it's hard to see it done in a way that doesn't jibe with your spirit. And we also know, both empirically and from our own experience, that our kids do better when they have teachers that look like them. That study's been done. So BLACC, if I can just say a couple words about BLACC. We exist to bring equity to the charter school space in New York. We work towards having our member schools access capital. So we have a regranting program, and we're trying to equal the playing field in terms of resources. Also capacity building, trying to assist them in any way we can, as most of them are individual schools. So we have some networks, including Excellence Community Schools, wanting to make sure that we do everything we can do to make this work more sustainable and the lift a little lighter. And then also to heighten our legislative relationships as well. So my question, we have argued here on the Hill for a number of years that charter schools led by people of color, in addition to positively changing the educational trajectory of students that you all teach, also have the added benefit of improving local economies and community development or redevelopment via facilities acquisition and rehabilitation, and using local minority vendors and contractors that don't have the capacity, perhaps, to compete for a traditional school district's contract. I'm wondering if this is true in your school situation, and if so, how? And so maybe I'll start with Cady.
I really appreciate this question. One of the things is absolutely true at Summit. And one of the things that I love about charter schools is how community rooted we are. We have a school that is in a former community center, a former grocery store. We even have a school in a former pickle factory in Washington. And in what otherwise might have been a forgotten space, we're bringing in our children and revitalizing that space. as a place in the community for just wellness and connection to happen. We've taken that revitalization concept a step further, and we have a program at our schools called our Expeditions program. And in this program, we try to partner with as many hundreds across 2 states of locally sourced vendors, leaders, and community-based organizations who are providing immersive and career-proximate experiences to our young folks to really help them get exposure to all the different ways they might want to pursue a concrete next step after graduation, in addition to a 4-year college pathway and option. What we've seen this do for our young people when you go into our schools is the way that they talk about what's possible for them is so different than anything I've ever seen before. They can tell you what they're thinking about and why, and how that might be tied to their economic empowerment and freedom, and which adults are helping them on that pathway and on that journey. It's so impressive. And what it also does is while creating increased awareness of economically responsible career paths for our young people, it also invests back into our community, and it creates a symbiotic relationship where there's just more economic stability and elevation of our local community partners.
Thank you, Zell.
So I was just discussing with one of my fellow New Mexican colleagues earlier that NACA used to share a campus with a local middle school. And so we outgrew that very, very quickly because we were in a series of portables. And so when we moved from that temporary location to a semi-permanent location, we actually are still currently occupying one of the last residential buildings of the old Albuquerque Indian School, which was in all effects a boarding school, right? And so to think about this, right, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, that building stood for the assimilation of indigenous kids. And to be able to move back into that space and to reclaim the building, but reclaim all of the atrocities and make sure that our students know that they come from resiliency, that they come from a history that was meant to destroy them. But this building here now stands for all of the dreams that their ancestors had for them. And so to be able to use this building in such a way to motivate, to encourage, to uplift our kids has been one of the most powerful things that I've been a part of. And we started NACA from 2 grade levels, 6th and 7th, and then grew all the way to 6th through 12th. And then we thought, hey, we're doing a good thing. So we went backwards and started a K through 5 edition of a K through 5 model. Well, as you all may know, we grew so much that we had to acquire another building. And so we're in partnership with a local community college. And so when we think about community, we think about all of the different organizations, schools, private partners, collaborators, et cetera, who believe in our mission and in our vision, who want to help us. And so right now, because we are outgrowing both of those facilities, we are looking for a permanent location. And that conversation we had this morning about owning our own building really, really stuck with me, because we are hoping to acquire this building in the near future. And so I just, put that out into the universe along with all of the other dreamers, in that it will happen. But it takes community. Yes. It takes like-minded people who believe in what you're doing. And I'm not just, I'm not taking all the credit when I say I mean our community at NACA and our network. And so helping to create the vision has been really, really an important thing for us. But more importantly, having community join you in that vision has been awesome.
My goodness, you should own that building. Right? Dr. Lang, if it's okay with you, Dr. Ankrum, that I let Dr. Lang go first. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
So I think when we talk about the resources for our community, because we're coming out of our application cycle, and we just entered into our planning year. So, but during our application cycle, we were very intentional to leverage as much of our resources to the community. So when we needed opportunities for graphic designers or design platforms or renting spaces, we did seek our local community business, our minority businesses. We're also working in process to renovate a space on the Stillman College campus, which serves the community as well as the HBCU, because it was an abandoned spot sitting on their campus that we're now able to leverage our resources to help renovate that. And part of our partnership is us creating that into a shared space that our students from the community can also use and have access to beyond school hours. But what we've really seen is that while we were being very intentional to identify partnerships during our planning process, when we submitted our application, we had 60 minority business who had signed on to support us and our students. So as our students move into internships, we already had opportunities for them to go and work directly with minority-owned businesses. And so we took that from, yes, we're looking at opportunities how we can have tangible resources, but we also wanted resources that will help build our students so they actually can build projects working with leaders and industry leaders and experts from the community. And for us, we looked at that as a way to grow our community, that I don't want to say older generation, but that's how our students would categorize them. They get to work with our generations and help to kind of bridge some of those gaps of misinformation or how they each perceived each other. And so we look at that as one of the largest resources that we did gain during this planning year, of just the opportunity that the expertise can be leveraged so our students can see that and benefit from that directly.
Wonderful.
Now we have over 100 teachers, and so just the impact of coming to work with us and what that's meant for the community. And then also in terms of galvanizing the community, like our parents vote, right? So we have over 1,000 kids, and that means that their families vote. And so, saying to them directly, we need you at this meeting, we need you at that meeting, and our parents come out. And so because they come out, the level of impact that we have in terms of being able to have conversations with our local politicians in order to get them to do things that they wouldn't naturally do. They can't just be anti-charter, because them being anti-charter now means that that's a huge voting bloc that can sway an election, right? And so because we have that power with our parents, it's a little bit better for us in terms of the overall outlook for charter schools.
Thank you. Switch over.
This is how you do co-moderation, all right? Let me just say, the thing I'm hearing, interestingly enough, from everybody on the panel is self-determination, right? Education for us, by us, in the public sector, right? And I think you can be African American, you can be Latinx, you can be indigenous, you can be anything, Latinx, you can be anything, and recognize the cultural, the community, the historical need to create your own and to define it the way you want to define it, to educate the children of your community the way you want to educate them. And if people want to join that, God bless them, but heaven help them if they stand in your way. And I think that's what I'm getting from you all. To that extent, we keep it real in this briefing here, folks. I just want to let you know that. To Dr. Lang, first, and this is specific to you, but others can answer. In that same vein of self-determination, the Bloomberg Foundation granted $20 million to the UNCF to support HBCUs and starting charter schools and to get these institutions of higher education to become state charter school authorizers, et cetera, within this space. What was your experience under the program in Alabama? And for the other panelists, how do you think support for these kind of initiatives, maybe future funding for Hispanic and Native American educational institutions, or to organizations such as the D9 or the Links, et cetera, or the Boulay and Hispanic fraternal organizations, may create even more diversity in public school leadership and in teachers, administrators, and school staff in the future?
So again, sometimes I get emotional to say Alabama's first HBCU charter school. And it's probably more so to say being its founder. Because when I reflect back, I'm a child of poverty. I'm a first-gen graduate student. And if it wasn't for Stillman College's Upward Bound program, I would not have had a pathway to go to college. And so I was able to come back to my same community and partner with the college that opened the door for me to obtain a college degree, to say, okay, how can we pour back into this community what was poured into me? And UNCF has played a very pivotal role in that. They have served as the mediator between, us, iDream Academy, and Stillman College, because this was new. And so it was looking at our school model and then looking at Stillman of not only what did they wanted to see out of a partnership, but what was their capacity to even support this type of partnership. To then say, okay, how can we help you all map out a partnership that's beneficial to not only both of you, but also to your community. And then as part of the application process, we don't receive funding during that time. And so UNCF was able to leverage funding to us in order for us to be able to submit an application that would get approved in order to make the partnership happen. But during our planning process, we were able to visit other schools that had other similar type partnerships and kind of like leverage on three key things that we wanted. One was to create a lab school on the Stillman College campus. For us, we wanted an opportunity to impact the broader sector. Like, how can we ensure that when teachers come out of college, they are ready to go into a classroom and make an immediate impact? On the same hand, Stillman was also seeing that many of their students, their future teachers, were struggling being able to travel off campus to complete their practicums, complete their hours. And so they looked at this as an opportunity not only grow their program, but make sure like their program had the supports, as well as us having additional supports for our students to break down interventions in small groups. The other one was we wanted our students to be able to participate when we say college and career exploration. So we designed a model that every 4 weeks, our students are able to go into each one of the program offerings at Stillman College to observe what does that program really look like in order to make more informed decisions of what they're going to major in. And so UNCF helped us not only kind of like design that, but also support financially of how we're able to implement that. The other piece of that was that we wanted our students to be able to, if we're on a college campus, they need to be enrolled in college courses. And we didn't want our parents to have to carry that burden. And so part of the partnership was that UNCF, because of that Bloomberg Foundation, was able to offer us the financial support that our students can earn up to 30 hours of college courses without the parents having to take on that expense. And that was something they were able to and willing to come to the table to help us with.
I love that. I love the fact that Bloomberg came in and was supportive with that initiative. But we didn't need Bloomberg. This should have been an initiative that's been self-started by HBCUs, in my humble opinion. But before that, before I get into my answer, shout out to the Qs. He said something about D9, and I just wanted y'all to know that the Qs is in the building. And so shout out to the Qs. But so similar to you guys, we also have a program that sends our kids to community college that we pay for, right? And so they can come out with 30 credits prior to, and that is so beneficial in terms of being able to afford colleges, right? Because like we know that our kids get caught up in owing book money and they leave college because they can't pay for their books or things of that nature, right? So just the little things. But quick story, I did my master's of teaching at Morgan State University, HBCU. I did my my EDM, my admin degree at Teachers College, Columbia University, an Ivy League school. And so TC has a lab school, right? Morgan State doesn't. Based off of my learning in terms of what prepared me to be an educator, it would have been more beneficial for Morgan State to have a lab school than it would be for TC, based off of my purview. I just know what the educators gave to me and poured into me at Morgan was amazing, right? I feel like at my Ivy League institution, it was more transactional, right? Like I feel like for example, there's a lab school at Southern University in Louisiana. There's also a lab school at Grambling State University in Grambling, both run by Kappas. I mean, I wouldn't. But but they're both doing their thing. They're both doing phenomenal work in terms of the things they're doing to leverage those universities and the resources that come from those universities in order to help those kids, right? And so we need to start thinking beyond just like philanthropy in terms of having these conversations about what can be done and what possible is. I feel like every HBCU should be some type of pipeline to teaching, right? If we're talking about diversifying teaching and we're not leveraging HBCUs, then what conversations are we really having? We're not really having the right conversations.
Education for us, by us is another one of our slogans at BLACC. So just another plug. If you told me I'd have brought posters. So this charter school program, the CSP, is, I think, the only federal funding for the creation of new charter schools and the replication and expansion of existing high-quality, high-performing charter schools. And we know that the funding has been held flat for a number of years, and it needs to be increased because it disproportionately supports leaders of color looking to start and or grow their current schools, because this is the population of charter school leaders with the least amount of access to philanthropic and foundational supports. Now, I totally agree with Dr. Ankrum that we need to figure out ways that we can self-fund, but if you received a CSP grant, which I know I did in the past, let us know how that was true of your situation. And if you did not, how would CSP have helped you start or expand your school? Do you want to start, Zell?
Sure, I can start. So a few of our schools have received CSP funding, and we talk about opening a school. You have operational costs, you have facility costs, you have human resource costs, you have cost upon cost upon cost. And so really thinking about all of those different things when you're trying to, I'm at a loss for words, but when I think about the mission of your school, right? You have a mission that you want to make sure that you are embracing every step of the way. And so when you don't have enough funding for the teachers that you want to recruit, that's an issue. When you don't have funding for the facility that you want to, that represents you and your school, that's an issue. And so I also really think about on the facilities piece, when as Indigenous people, we think outside of the four walls, right? School happens for us with land-based learning and healing opportunities that don't necessarily and more than likely don't happen inside the four walls of a classroom, and that costs money. It costs money to get transportation and to find, costs that include, going on a field trip, paying knowledge keepers, to present information and content to your kids. All that to say is that funding is very, very helpful, but there's more needed, right? There's always when you're thinking about schooling for children, for your kids, there's always, always more that needs to happen to create a successful school.
Anyone else? Cady, do you want to answer? Or?
I resonate with what was already shared. I think the thing I would add is that we need to be able to fund our dreams for our young people. And we need to give leaders the resources to be able to reimagine and co-construct and to develop and to build on what has like come before us and like what we've learned from our ancestors to build a collective dream that we have for what's possible for our young people. And without funding, we can't do it. And why wouldn't we want to see more of what works for our young people? Why wouldn't we resource our young people and the leaders who are most proximate to that work?
I wonder, can any of you speak to what you actually used your CSP funding for in replication?
At a high level, we received funding in our Washington State schools as we scaled into, we were some of the first charter schools in Washington State. And so we were able to we have 4 schools now in Washington State serving both middle and high school age students.
So ours was around operational costs prior to opening, recruitment, marketing, and then bringing on support staff.
I know that a lot of the CMOs who are very, very well funded have people who can write their applications for them. They can outsource, recruitment of students and teachers. And I know often we're trying to do all of that. And so I can imagine that the funds are particularly important. Dr. Lang or Dr. Ankrum, anything to add?
I would just add that I'm one of those who's in that unfortunate boat of not having CSP funding, waiting to see if it will become available for us in this cycle, but also having the determination that we're going to have a strong launch. And so how do we look for other alternatives? But I have 5 different iterations of a budget model. I'm holding on to the one of the possibility of a CSP, but then I also have that reality one of if that funding isn't there. So I may be a team of 1 a little longer than I would like to be. But at the end of the day, it's how do I leverage the funds that we do have? How do I make sure those go directly to our students and our staff? So we're continuing to seek as much as other additional funding as we can until that gap is until we're able to fill that gap.
I don't know a charter leader that hasn't used the mantra, we do more with less. And it's unfortunate that we have to do more with less, but we take less based off of administrative costs that come from the district off top. So my district takes about 20% off top. And so I was asked a question the other day. It was like, what are you doing with the $18,500 that you're getting per student? I was like, first off, I only get $14,000. Where's the other $4,500? But in knowing that, I feel like we do a really good job without CSP money in terms of just making sure that we use every cent on our kids, right? I feel like that's super important for us to do. We've built up a healthy reserve in order to go out and buy real estate so that we can do our dream school. I guess that's me being a fiscal Republican, but you got to do what you got to do in terms of making sure that that you have the funds that you need in order for your kids to dream big. So.
Thank you, everybody, for the question. We're going to have one last question from us, and then we want to hear from you all directly. And so get your questions ready as I prepare this last one. But the first thing I have to say is, and we can't move forward until I say it, is shout out to the men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Now we can move on. Related to the previous question, all of the co-sponsoring orgs of this Hill briefing are in support of 2 congressionally supported bills, but I want to ask about one that has bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. S3072 in the Senate, led by Senators Cornyn, Bennett, Booker, Schatz, and Hassan, and in the House, H.R. 6418, led by Representatives Letlow and Takuda, what we call the Educator Bill. And this bill would provide sorely needed pre-planning grant dollars to public school teachers looking to start a charter school. And we could have 1, 2, or 3, however many feel like they need to speak. How would this kind of funding have helped you all in preparing your school's charter and application for startup funding? Sure.
I'll start with that. The opportunity to have this fund, I think it definitely would have helped my credit score, because I was a district administrator. And once I decided to become a school founder in Alabama, you had to make a decision. Do you step away from your job security in order to pursue a dream? And for me, I had to step out on faith because I knew what I was called to do. But I knew once I committed to becoming a school founder, I no longer had a salary. And so I had to commit for 24 months to do this work, to write an application, to do community engagement, and not only not have an income coming in, but to pull out of my savings and take away from my family to pay for the 501c3 application, to pay for community engagement, to do all of the work. My husband was there to support me, and financially we were able to do it. But as a leader of color, most of us don't have that opportunity, and we can't do that. And so without that guaranteed funding, that's a big risk, because even though I stepped out, I wasn't guaranteed to have my application approved. In fact, the first go round, my application was denied. And I had nothing to, it was either, are you gonna go back into the district? But I was like, no, we're gonna continue this work, so we're gonna keep trucking up this hill. And for me, funding didn't come until month 26. And now we are approved, and I'm in a better situation now, but it's very difficult to, regardless of what that vision, what that dream, what your desire is, the reality is that it's very difficult. And for me, I had to leverage credit cards. I had to leverage a lot in order to get to this position. And that's a lot to ask for people who are doing something to positively impact their community. So it's like, why do we have to sacrifice on the stake to do what's right? But we are having to do that.
Dr. Lang, thank you for sharing your story. That's powerful, and I commend you for your self-sacrifice. But you shouldn't have had to sacrifice anything. It was a charter school leader that just opened a charter school last year in New York State on Long Island, and I kept him on my payroll so that he would have income, because I knew he was going to be going through the same thing that you were going through, right? Like, I had him like at home on assignment, but still getting him paid, because I knew that like it's hard to sustain that kind of work. And so just like sending the elevator back down is one of the things that I think that we all should be trying to do. And so in instances like that, it should have been somebody like me reaching out to you like, hey, I got some consultancy work. It's not a heavy lift, but you know, in order for you to be able to maintain, I wish I had known.
I think we hear a lot of things being said about Generation Z. And I think that there's something that we can really learn from Generation Z at this moment in time. We're at this moment where our workforce is demanding more purpose, more relevance in their work. They're asking us for more proximity and more transparency. And I see this as an opportunity to just really place our value on the perspectives of the practitioners closest to our young people and closest to the work. I think that funding like this is going to allow us to really empower our really brave and dedicated, brilliant educators to have the resources to reimagine and to start anew. And I think that it's a moment in time where authentic and conscious leadership on earned collective work should be given resources to proceed. So I'm excited about that.
So on this question, I put on my NISN hat. As stated earlier, we're in the business of supporting others who want to start their own schools. And so our network really helps by providing a school design fellowship for not just Indigenous people, but also other other people from Black and Brown communities. We currently have a school in Oakland that's dedicated to our young men of color. And so this funding can directly support these efforts of these folks who want to lead the next generation. And so I really, really think that it's important for us to continue to advocate for the funding that we deserve. We deserve this funding because we are doing the work wholeheartedly. We are the ones that are, in the trenches, as you would say. But more importantly, we all are sitting up here because someone gave us the opportunity. And so we want to be able to provide that opportunity not only to our kids, but those other school leaders who are dreaming and imagining and wanting to create an opportunity for their own communities. Community-led education is really, really the space where we can grow our students and our kids. And, just want to shout out our state of New Mexico and all of the different, I was saying, we have a lot of charter schools in New Mexico, and the work that's happening there is innovative and is very, very amazing. So shout out to my fellow New Mexicans in the room. And just, we need this funding and we need other funding because we shouldn't have to beg and plead. We should be able to utilize what we have to continue to grow instead of seeking and using our own personal funding to do that. That's not a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions from the crowd, from the audience? Yes. Anybody can answer or take a stab. So Miriam, you can do that
Hello?
too. You're a school leader. You're a school leader.
Well, but it's also one of the tenets of BLACC that we are working to make sure that we as a collective can do just those things. We haven't done much in that vein yet, but absolutely. And we know that some of those barriers keep our people from providing services to our communities. So yes, we're definitely focused on that.
I would say I spoke briefly about it earlier, our expeditions program at Summit, but to give a concrete example, at a school I was leading, there was a boxing gym like down the street. It was one of our students' uncle's boxing gym, and we wanted to start contracting for after-school programming with him, and he had never done that type of work and the contract, and we were able to sort of like sit side by side with him and work him through like what would it look like to have liability insurance and what would it look like to sort of like go through some of those legal or compliance hurdles in order to work with young people in public education. And now that it's been 3 years since we started that contract, and we have a robust after-school program with this Gladiators boxing gym, and it's just really cool to see the community come together. They had a banner for our schools in the community parade, and just like what it means to just really celebrate and give back and be a school or a network of schools within a community versus just like a school with a building in a community.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back there.
So, as a former administrator in a charter school, I was the lunch lady, the bus driver, the recess. I was the substitute. And so I know what it feels like to be burnt out at the end of the day. And if I'm burnt out, the teachers in my school, the support staff in my school is burned out too. And so being able to, one, just have the empathy and really listen and hear them when they say, you know, we need a personal day, a mental health day, right? And so being able to move away from the very structured professional development agenda that we have and instead invite, you know, people who, not just professionals in the mental health field, but really knowledge keepers in our indigenous communities to come in and to have circles with our staff members to really just provide a space for listening, sharing, collaborating, together time with each other, because I think a lot of times we work on islands. And a lot of times we don't seek help, right? If I could do all of those things and not ask for help because I didn't want to seem vulnerable, that made me even more stressed out. So being able to say, I can't do everything all in one day, so I need help. And so encouraging everyone in your school community to be able to be vulnerable and say, I need help. And that way, when other people know that you need help, they're more willing to reach out and, you know, help you. And so being able to have that environment of openness and trust between the school leader. I don't believe in a top-down model. First of all, I believe that we're all a team. We're all there in this together. And so when you have an issue, I have an issue too. You need a half day off, I'll come into your classroom and I'll help you out. Or maybe one of our EAs can come into your class. Being able to help them in a way that doesn't make it seem like it's a chore, that they have to take the afternoon off, but rather an opportunity.
I think a lot of administrators, when they get the administrator hat, they forget about the teacher hat, right? And so I have a high level of empathy in terms of how I interact and engage with teachers. And so I'm on the staff call-in list, the email that circulates when somebody's out. And so I'm very intentional about checking in on folks, right? Like, hey, I know you're sick, or is there anything that we can do for you? Like, you know, just being very caring and understanding of folks when they need days off. And it happens, right? Like, it's life. I think post-COVID and then seeing so many people pass away during COVID, it changed my mindset. I think I was real regimented prior to, like, you need to be at work, I'm at work. But I think my level of grace has changed over time, and I've softened over time because I realized that teachers are humans, and I was a human when I was a teacher. And so I think that growth and maturation is important in terms of becoming the administrator that you want to be for people.
Any other questions? Yes. Oh, right in the back and then here. Go ahead. Yes.
Hi, how are you? My name is Courtney Taylor. This is kind of a follow-up to your question and your responses. So I always share that I've taught probably every grade, kindergarten through 8th grade. I'm also a former principal. And I left because of, it just wasn't sustainable. And so I followed the model that you just shared, where I was a principal all last year. I taught kindergarten for a whole month while I was also a principal, was lunch lady, all the things. And I'm now focusing on trying to help other Black women in education, specifically, navigate this space, because we know that it can be a space that's exhausting and tiring and all the things, but we don't leave because it's also rewarding and it's our passion. It's like, if we don't do it, who will do it? Because our kids deserve it. And I'm curious from anyone on the panel, suggestions, thoughts around creating
First and foremost, thank you for sharing your story. I feel like there's a lot of harm that happens to Black women in education, and I don't think that we talk about it enough. So thank you for bringing that up. And so I'm super intentional about like checking in with all teachers, but particularly historically marginalized people, especially when they report to a hierarchy, right? So like I may not be the person that they report to, but if they're reporting to a racialized white person, I know how that can be, and I know how damaging that can be in terms of one's psyche. And so I'm super intentional about checking in with the Black women in my building, right? Allowing them to have a sounding board in terms of expressing the things that they need to express, that only they can understand and I can understand. And then also building pathways in order for them to kind of share their voices without feeling like there's repercussions that are going to happen or whatever, because there ain't gonna be no repercussions. Not while I'm the leader. Like you need to be sharing your concerns out loud, right? So that we can do something about it. It took a young Black teacher like deciding that she didn't want to return. I'm like, wait, where's this person? Like I didn't see her at the first day of professional development, and so I started asking questions like, well, where's this person? I didn't even know that she had resigned or whatever. And so it took me tracking her down to kind of do my own exit interview, because people don't really tell you the things in exit interviews because they want you to give them a good reference or whatever. So they're not going to really tell you the things that you need to know in terms of that. And so I tracked her down myself, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, what happened? Why are you not here, right? And she laid it out why she wasn't here. And so then I met with my administrators, and I'm like, listen, I don't know what it is y'all are doing, but here's the feedback, right? And so now I got to hold you accountable based off of this feedback that I heard, because this is other people's lived experiences. And so based off of that, there's some things that need to change in terms of your approach. And you need to be more mindful in terms of holding yourself accountable of how you treat historically marginalized populations that work for us. So thank you for that.
We all, most of us flew in, and they tell us, put your mask on first before you put it on someone else. Right? So how do you all put your mask on? And before you answer that, I just want to say you should not have done that. I mean, you should not have had to have done that. And I respect you so much for doing it. I mean, those kids are so much better because of your sacrifice. So thank you. How do you all put your mask on?
She would have threw you a contract. You would have thrown her a contract too, had you known.
Oh, I would have helped you out left and right, because you shouldn't have had to, but I'm glad you did. How do you do, what do you do to put your mask on? How do you take care of you so you can take care of others?
I don't. I need to do better, so I'm gonna reach out to you to find out what you're doing.
I can share. So I'm new to this seat, 11 years in the organization, new to this role. I'm in my first year. And one of the things that I've been doing in the professional space is just taking a really close look at all the processes, the tools, the systems that we have, and figuring out how to make it way more collective. I think that it is so much more empowering to lead with an organization than lead an organization. I don't feel like fulfilled by people following me into the future. I'm not looking for like a personal commitment. I'm looking for a commitment to the work. And I think that when there's like a team where there's embedded culture, that we are working collectively and getting very clear and specific about what that means, because at the end of the day, we represent public charter schools where we are held accountable to certain metrics and deliverables. So that it's not, we can't be like purely flat, but we can't, because we have authorizers and all those things too, right? But we can develop systems of collaboration that really can weather storms in ways that don't leave me depleted at the end of the day, and where I can lean on the strength of the collective and not feel this like stress to be perfect all the time, because we all know like how exhausting it can be to just feel like there is zero forgiveness or tolerance for a mistake, and how terrible it is for our young people to see representation in us and then see us being held accountable with zero forgiveness. And so the first step for me has been developing that culture in the organization so that there's that collective strength. And then also like I like to walk and play with my son and all those other things too.
I want to just add, For me, although I'm new into the charter founding, I've spent 10 years as I launched traditional schools. And there's a such thing as I needed a brain break because it was being there when the custodians came in the morning and being there when the custodians left in the evening. And I had to transition our team, beginning with the admin, that Friday at 3 o'clock, we're no longer sending emails. We're no longer sending newsletters. There's nothing that's going to staff from Friday to Sunday. It picks back up Monday. And once we begin to do that and stay consistent, we then were able to bring our teachers to understand to where collectively we have this mentality that school doesn't end, but it's like, no, we have to stop and we have to transition to being a part of our family. And then for me personally, every morning I have to equip myself with prayer and the armor. I have to walk into the building with that. Otherwise, I don't think I could walk out of it. And the other is being very intentional about maximizing the time while we're in the building. And so let's get what we can get done while we're in the building. And if it doesn't get done, we'll pick it up tomorrow. But we're not taking it. Some stuff we can't continue to take it home. And so we began to create that type of culture. And we didn't lose anything. We just saw that we were very intentional about our systems and what we did during the day.
Yeah, I'd like to echo prayer. Very, very grounding. And also, as stated before, like being able to say, I can't do it all. I'm not perfect. I'm not this person who, is the end all be all. And creating different teams of support for myself, not, putting off the work on other people, but creating teams of support so that I'm not the only one that's the gatekeeper, right, of everything that happens in the school building. And so trusting others, giving people agency is also really, really important. And then just really going back to grounding myself and going back to the whole purpose and the whole reason why I began this journey in the first place was because I wanted something different for the kids that came after me, because my schooling was not great. It wasn't a great experience. And so being able to always recenter myself. And, I go back to this one memory of when I was a school day and everything was just crazy. And and there I was like 7 o'clock in the evening and thinking to myself, why am I here? Why am I doing all of this work? Like questioning myself, why am I here? Went home, did what I needed to do, and like 2 days later, a kid comes into my office, and I will do this without crying, really just affirmed why I was there. And it just was like, okay, I hear you. And that's why we continue the work even though we're tired. That's why we continue the work even though we're, our cups are already full. That's why we continue the work. So I want to encourage each and every one of you to go back to your communities, to go back to your schools, and reground yourself and say, why am I here? And I guarantee you, somewhere down the line, may not be tomorrow, but you'll know. You'll know the reason why you continue to do what you do. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself for all of the selfless hours that you put in, for all of the work that you do on behalf of our kids, because it's not for nothing. You are making a difference in somebody's life. So thank you.
So thank you for your questions. And before we end, I want you to just go with me here for a second, okay? Close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. Picture a public school that's created by people of color from your community, that can hire people of color as teachers, staff, administrators, counselors, that it wants to hire, that uses the local businesses, MBEs, WBEs of that community for curriculum and landscaping and transportation and food prep and repairs and construction and laptops, et cetera, even those of the students that it serves. Think about a school that employs the community institutions for student mentorship and board membership. Picture a school that creates and supports continuing professional development for teachers, that brings students back as teachers, with an organized partnership with parents to be advocates and defenders of that school against anyone that comes against it, even at the ballot box, but holds the school accountable for results. That creates pipelines to HBCUs, community colleges, and professional schools, and that supports, sustains, and passes culture and language to the next generation. Now open your eyes. That's not just a quality school, that's power. Give a round of applause to our panelists. Thanks to BLACC, Diverse Charter Schools Coalition, the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools, the National Charter Collaborative, and the UNCF, and the House Public School Caucus, who is also a co-sponsor. Give them a round of applause as well. And our sponsors, Charter Schools Development Corporation, for being our sponsor. Thank you all so much for being here, and have a good day.